Morning, everyone. Welcome to Creative Mornings, Oakland. To represent and speak on behalf of Oakland today, we have a public speaker. She's an educator and raptivist, a rap activist. She's the founder and creator of the global hip-hop movement called Raptivism that promotes culture, freedom, and justice.
Ohayo gozaimasu, bonjour, salamu alaikum, shalom. How y'all feeling? Good. That's what I like to hear. So I want to start off today talking about love work, what my friend Gabriel Teodros calls love work, right? Oftentimes when we think about the word work, we think about all these things that we're obligated to do. Sometimes that's that stuff that is soul-sucking for us. Sometimes this idea of work is attached to this feeling of suffering, that it has to be something terrible in order to count, right? But I want to talk today about love work as the most ideal work. That work that, yes, it can be hard, but it also feeds our soul, right? It's something that fuels us and energizes us every single day, every single morning, even with the challenges that come with that. To me, love work is composed of two main things, or rather than being composed, it's at the nexus of two main things. One, happiness. Happiness. What makes you happy? Profoundly happy. Makes me think of that Billie Holiday. Money, you got lots of friends hanging round your door. But when the spending comes to end, they don't hang round no more. Rich relations give crust of bread and such. You can help yourself, but don't take too much. Mama may have, and Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got its own, that's got its own. Right, what is that thing that makes you profoundly happy? Thank you. Beyond those material things, right? Those can also be important. Just take a moment to think about it. And purpose. What's that sense of purpose, that thing that fuels you, that thing that you're passionate about, that stirs within you? Whenever you get close to it, you know that there's something within you that really needs to jump out and get even closer, right? I think for me, love work is those two things, and it really is at that nexus, at that intersection. And discovering my happiness and how it was tied to music wasn't always apparent to me. Learning my passion for music in many ways actually was a coincidence, I would say. It happened around a time in elementary school where my mom, she was working as a single mom, and it was a pretty difficult time in the sense that she was working multiple jobs, trying to help us get by while my parents were also getting separated at that time, right? And I just remember these really long days where she was working sometimes up to 15 hours a day and couldn't pick me up from school. And this led to her deciding that she was going to sign me up for after-school musicals, unbeknownst to me, right? So the next thing I know, I show up, I'm in a classroom after school with a bunch of other kids and a teacher on a piano. I'm like, what am I doing here? Right, looking around. And then he starts playing these songs. Now, keep in mind, I did grow up around music, the music industry. My parents were booking agents when they were still together. And so I was exposed to all this Funkadelic and, James Brown, all these incredible people they were booking. But at the same time, neither of them were musical whatsoever. Right? And I never really was in a position to imagine myself creating or being on that end, right? If anything, I saw them more behind the scenes. So anyways, I'm in this classroom and all of us are standing there. The teacher on the piano starts playing through all these different tunes. And then he slowly but surely, after we all sing along, goes one by one around the room asking us to sing a line from this song. And we all know this feeling, right? They get closer and closer to you. You're doing this like warm up icebreaker. It's supposed to make you all more comfortable. And everyone's like, what am I going to say? Ah! So I had that feeling where he gets closer and closer. And I'm like, I've never used my voice for anything besides talking, for more or less, right? I was 6 or 7 around that time. And he finally comes to me, and then he plays this line and says, okay, can you sing this line? And when I opened my mouth, it was incredible. It's like something melted away. First of all, I noticed this warmth that kind of bubbled up through my being. All of a sudden, I was so present in the now that I didn't have to worry about all those anxieties that I was holding on to. It was in that way a sense of happiness, that I could let go of the suffering that I was choosing to have, that anxiety, right? It allowed me to be in the now. The second thing I noticed, I looked around the room and I saw a magnetism, that people were alive in their eyes. There was a calm and a pause where people just stood there staring. And all of a sudden I felt more connected, that there was some kind of gravity to the music that allowed us to feel more interconnected. Even though that already existed, it amplified that. Does that make sense? So for me, that happiness, that grain started to sprout with music. And in some ways, it was by coincidence. In some ways, it was by me pushing myself also to be allowed to be pushed outside of my comfort zones to discover something new. That it wasn't necessarily even apparent to me, for some of those of us who struggle with figuring out what makes us truly happy in life. When it came to my sense of purpose, I think that this became more and more apparent to me in high school, that I was really passionate about social justice, really passionate about social change and activism. And this was a time where my mom, she was determined that I got one of the best educations possible, if possible, regardless of our circumstance. And she ended up sending me to a very incredible, privileged school, which was mainly white upper middle class school in the city just outside of Seattle called Bellevue. And it was an incredible experience. It taught me to think critically, and there were so many great teachers, and still there were so many moments where there were these blind spots and people not being able to really connect and talk about race, talk about gender, talk about sexuality, talk about religion, so on and so forth. There were a lot of points of tension, not only in my school, but in my whole community. I can't count how many times I would get up and go to school. My mom and I were one of the only Black families within our unit. And people would puncture our tires and put holes in it so I couldn't go to school, right? Well, not specifically so I couldn't go to school, but it would inhibit me from going to school. So I started to bike, right? I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to make it there anyways. I'm going to rush, get creative in the face of some of those challenges. So in my community, and in particular in my school community, I knew there were a lot of compassionate people, but there was something that was not connecting. There were a lot of issues that were rising. I remember the one day out of the school year where we're learning about indigenous history in the United States, one boy jumps out of his desk and starts doing a rain dance in the middle of the classroom, and the teacher didn't say anything, right? And he did it to make fun. Everyone was laughing, thinking it was funny. There was this stereotype. And there was this culture of cool around it, even though I don't think people necessarily had that intention of being mean. It was just this ignorance that they didn't have a chance to dialogue about. Or maybe their families were uncomfortable having that dialogue about, or so on and so forth. And so I saw an opportunity there. It's like, how do we have these conversations? I couldn't sit still. I think the high school thing and that peer pressure would have been to like, okay, just be quiet. Ha, 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 that's so funny, right? Let that pass by. But there was something within me that resonated and said, we got to say something. I don't care. I don't care if people would argue, oh, well, that's not directly related to you, or don't worry about it, that's not your issue, or you're too sensitive, whatever, so on and so forth. You don't know what you're talking about. But there was something within me that wouldn't allow me to be complacent, to be apathetic in the face of some of those issues that arose. And of course, to pursue it with compassion and with love, but to not allow it to just pass by, right? And hearing that voice, feeling that intuition for me was tracing that sense of purpose, right? That sense of, oh, there's something that's part of my being, right? That's something that makes me feel tied to maybe why I'm here on this tiny little planet in this universe among many universes. So I had to listen to that voice, that element. Often when I had those conversations, it would turn into vitriolic debate if I would speak up and speak out. And then I started to write poetry. I started to write poetry even before that, but I started to write poetry and read aloud in front of the class about some of my experiences, about what I was observing in the school environment. And all of a sudden, a lot of the students and even the teachers started to open up and say, oh, Can we talk about that? Or what did you mean? Or wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that you felt that way, right? And we could have a conversation that was catalyzed through the arts. Which leads me to raptivism. I think one of the most recent iterations of my love work, this connection between what makes me truly and profoundly happy, as well as that sense of purpose, is raptivism, rap activism, seeing and knowing that my love of the culture and the arts can also be a catalyst for social change. As Jeff Chang says, social and political change is often, culture is often a dress rehearsal for social and political change. Right? And for me, why hip hop? I like the way the narcissist, the rapper MC puts it. Hip hop stands for highly intellectual people hovering over politics. The hyphen is the bridge that we walk across. Right? So for me, it was this culture, this ability to really connect and think critically about the world around us, and not necessarily telling people what to think, but encouraging us to question, to probe deeper, to reimagine the status quo for the world that we want to live in. What does that look like? Not just what do we stand against, but what do we stand for? And how do we express that through the arts? How do we start to manifest that through culture, through the stories that we tell? So raptivism was born from this connection, this love work, so to speak. And it's incredible to think how many different journeys raptivism has taken me on. From the other year, I was in Belarus performing as one of the first hip hop artists ever in the Belarus Philharmonic, or doing TED Talks in Costa Rica, or being in Oprah magazine. Woo woo, yeah. And it spanned across over 12 countries and 4 continents, right, since it started. And the things that's kind of bananas about that is that it just started as an idea. I had no plane tickets. I had no fun, nothing. I was just like, I love the arts. I love social justice. I don't know if part of this tie to boundaries and borders is also because I grew up between Seattle, Washington, and Yokohama, Japan, or being multiracial African-American and Japanese, among many other things. But knowing that the constructedness of borders and boundaries and identities also can be fluid, and that there's so much strength in our solidarity, in us being able to work together. But there was something within me that said, yes, this is a worthy cause. This is something that's important to invest in. This is a vision that I have. I'm a fan of having a mission statement, even as an individual. Oftentimes we have companies that we work for, or organizations that we've started, or businesses, and that might have a mission statement and a vision, but I think even as an individual, we too can have those mission statements. Right? It allows a focus for our love work, so to speak. And just like that, I also invest in my professional development, right? That enrichment, as well as the output. I take retreats, i.e. going outside of my comfort zone and traveling, even in my own city, doing something new so that I can reflect and enrich the work that I'm doing, right? And make connections that maybe I couldn't necessarily predict, right? So I think that idea, that it started off as simply one concept, one vision, and has been able to galvanize. And even when I reach out to hip hop activists, it doesn't matter whether it's in Kazakhstan or Senegal or South Africa, wherever I've been, if I tell that story, then it's somehow a connector that people say, I'm energized by that story, and yes, I want to participate. I want to be part of that, right? I think that's an incredible gift. It's important in this journey also for me to define my own success. That's one thing I've realized, especially when we're talking about work. This reminds me actually of my first job. So I remember I was turning 16. I was excited. I was applying for all these different jobs, everywhere from Red Robin to McDonald's, so on and so forth, you name it, right? And I couldn't get a single call back for an interview. I was feeling really bummed out. I was like, oh my gosh, I've applied for everything, I can't count how many applications, right? And around that time, thank goodness for my mother. It was my birthday, and she took me in the car. She said, okay, come on, baby, let's go. I'm like, where are we going? She's like, don't worry about it. You'll see when we get there. And we go up to this huge skyscraper in downtown Seattle, and she has me start filling out forms, different forms. And next thing I know, I've registered for my own business at 16. That was my first job, right? And she said, now you have to imagine, what is it that you want to do? And literally, I had to manifest and create that opportunity. I said, you know what? I like it when people use their imagination. I like seeing people play and share space and have a collective reason to play. So I want to start a toy company. And I found high-tech toys because I love technology, right? And I picked each one, and I eventually had enough opportunity to hire even my cousins. My mom said, you got to earn your college books. I did that, right? And it was incredible. Thousands of dollars started to roll in each day to the point where they asked me to open a storefront, right? As a 16-year-old, and I had to decide to go to college instead and not stay in Seattle for that particular thing. But that also started as an idea and shaping an opportunity and seeing an opportunity even outside of all the no's, right? Or the boxes that people wanted to fit me in and say, oh, that's not for you. When it comes to Raptivism, there are also tons of challenges that I faced along the way. Everything from, I remember the first time I got interested in doing human rights work globally, and I applied for a fellowship to ask, hey, I would love to learn more. The interviewer asked me, well, why would you ever be interested in global issues? Why don't you just focus on domestic issues, your issues for you, right? And this questioning of my ideas, of my aspirations, of that vision, but part of that resiliency, I think it just kept adding and watering that flower to grow, you know? That rose out of the concrete, so to speak. So transforming that energy. Today my love work, I think really shifts to a question and an idea of liberation. What does liberation look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? I'm thinking of Nina Simone, you know. I wish I knew how it feels to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could share all the love in my heart. Say it loud, say it clear, for the whole wide world to hear, right? That freedom, how does it feel? Nina said, to live without fear. Imagine one day to live without fear. But I really want to challenge us today to even think about that. If we have change agents in the room, even within our own individual lives, what does that change look like that you want to manifest? And sometimes it can be scary too. I don't know. Oh, maybe it'll change. That's okay too. We are dynamic beings. Our vision plans can change, but it starts with one step, right, in that vision plan. That said, I want to conclude on this note about being able to build collectively. In hip hop, we call this the cipher. It's a space where we give and exchange energy. And to me, that's a metaphor for our interconnectivity, how much we truly need each other, right? Y'all feel me on that? Solidarity is essential. Yes, these ideas, I can have one idea as an individual, but when I join that together with other folks, we can build something massive and incredible, or if it's not huge, something very dynamic. And it enriches the work that we do. It's not necessarily about being in this one siphon of, this is my stuff, right? And that's something that I think I've learned and have been able to give testimony to through some of the global hip hop work that I do, that it has to be collaborative, it has to be open, it has to be dynamic, and based on dialogue and exchange of ideas. So that said, you don't think I'm just going to talk about the cipher, right, and just be like, oh, yeah, okay, that's the idea, cool. No, y'all are going to participate. So I want you to just take a moment. Think about, what does your love work look like? What does your love work look like? And I love the way we rock every day, we making it on and off the clock. And I love the way we rock every day, we making it on and off the clock, the clock. And I love the way we rock every day, we making it on and off the clock. And I love the way we rock every day, we making it on and off the clock, the clock. On and off the clock, the clock. On and off the clock, the clock. On and off the clock, the clock, the clock. So y'all still have your words? Okay, come on up.
Visual. Visual. Visual.
Communicate.
Visual.
Communicate.
Cross-cultural creative expression.
Communicate.
Cross-cultural creative expression.
Communicate.
Cross-cultural creative expression.
Communicate.
Cross-cultural creative expression.
Communicate.
I love it. Y'all awake now?
Communicate.
Yeah.
Cross-cultural creative expression.
And sometimes we feel like slaves, working so hard and we don't get paid like we're supposed to. People say I owe you, but they ain't so loyal. Can't you tell I'm a queen? I'm so royally pissed when you just in this. I throw a hissy fit. How you feeling this? Cause I'm killing this. Resurrected so you know who you're dealing with. We be the people and we be resilient. Hey, punching another day. Wake up now cause it's time to celebrate. We be the people through the track elevated. Don't know who we be cause we're often underrated. If you got excuses, please just save it. If you got game, please know that I played it. Making the music so society can face it. I spit for freedom so you can taste it.
Communicate.
And I love the way we rock. Every day we making it on and off the clock. And I love the way we rock. Every day we making it on and off the clock, the clock. And I love the way we rock. Every day we making it on and off the clock. And I love the way we rock. Every day we making it on and off the clock, the clock. 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 The clock, the clock. Whoa, 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 whoa. The clock, the clock, the clock. Whoa. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Thank you so much.
Cross-cultural creative expression.
Communicate.
Thank you.
Cross-cultural creative.
Arigato. Merci. Jai Jif. Tusen tack. Gracias. Shishini.